When I was a couple weeks short of my 70th birthday, I started thinking about my mother's mother, who lived to be 100, and her mother, who lived to be 102, and my father, who lived to be 90, longer than anyone we had ever heard of in his family. I began to think that maybe our generation could be the first to routinely live to be 100. When I talked about this at family dinner one night, my granddaughter, who was 5, said,
"What are you going to do for the next 30 years, Grandpa?"
Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Price.
And I'm Gregg Kaloust. And we are Oldish. And this is our podcast, Oldish.
If you're oldish or know someone who is, please join us every week for conversations amongst ourselves
And our special guests
about what it means to be oldish in the 21st century.
If you ever wonder whether you're getting old, you're oldish. What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes?
Hi, I'm Greg, and I'm oldish.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm oldish. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Oldish, Conversations on Aging in the 21st Century. Hi, everybody. We've got good news because we have Leslie Ross-Degnan back with us, and we're very excited to look at another book together. Leslie's going to take over in a second and tell us about the author, the book, which is titled The Woman Who Met Herself by Laura Pearson. I want to say before we get started that we're very excited that Leslie received an award recently. It's called the 2025 Ann Whitford Paul Award for the most promising fiction. And this was for her children's manuscript, Little Crow. So we wish you well, Leslie, on this road to what's next with this Little Crow gem, and a big congratulations.
Thank you very much, Janet. It's very nice of you to
Leslie.
mention it. Thanks, Greg. All right. Shall I take it away then?
Take it away.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Laura Pearson, the British writer who wrote our book today, The Woman Who Met Herself. She lives in Leicestershire, I think that's how you say it, England, with her husband, her 2 children. And she says she has a cat who likes to lie on her keyboard while she tries to write. So Laura's young. It's interesting that she wrote this book about an oldish character, but when I did a little more research, I found that she, even though she's 45 and not oldish yet, she seems wise beyond her years, as is seen in the way that she portrays oldish women characters in this novel, but also in her other novels. As I looked at some of her novels, I discovered that she often has older women as her characters. Her first bestseller was The Last List of Mabel Beaumont, which she wrote in 2023. And the main character in this story is 86-year-old Mabel. So her husband, who likes to write lists, has just died, and she finds his final list. And it says find D. And so Mabel is sure that he means their friend Dot. So off she goes on this journey to find this woman. So since the success of the Last List novel, Pearson went on to write 6 more titles in 2025, which includes this book, The Woman Who Met Herself. So she writes fictional novels with themes around women's issues, not always older women, but frequently. Her stories explore themes such as identity, relationships, grief, loss, self-discovery. Self-discovery is a big one. And in this video that I watched of Laura talking about her writing, she says that she's interested in books that have small decisions that have a big impact on a woman's life. And we're going to explore this a little further when we talk about the story. Some of Pearson's other writing includes writing for The Guardian and newspaper. It's a British newspaper, and The Telegraph. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with those periodicals. So The Guardian is a very left-leaning liberal newspaper, and The Telegraph, in contrast, is definitely a more conservative newspaper. So, she balances it out to appeal to both sides. So the summary of this novel, let's get to that. It's a character-driven novel, so I think I should begin with introducing the 2 main characters, Debbie Jones and Ruth Waverly. Debbie Jones is a pretty adventurous person. Even after she lost her husband, she's ready for whatever life throws at her. She's in her 60s, so they're sort of on the threshold of oldishness, these two women. But for Debbie, that doesn't mean it's over for her. She's kind of experiencing a new beginning in her life. She moves back to the neighborhood that she grew up in, and she gets a job doing support for a mental health charity, basically going door to door to educate people and sometimes collecting money for the organization. But one day she walks up to a door and she knocks, and Ruth Waverly, our other main character, answers the door. Now, Ruth, she doesn't like surprises. She's different from Debbie. Her life isn't as great as she thought it should be or would be, but she's concerned about being in her 60s, and she feels like her options are sort of, limited now. She's proud of her home and her twin boys that she raised, but they're gone now and they're making their own way in the world. So she's experiencing some empty nester emotions. She's not terribly happy in her marriage, so she's wondering what she can do about that, but figures, well, it could be worse, so she stays. And then when that person knocks on her door and she opens it, the two of them really get a shock. They've never met, but they recognize each other immediately because they have the same face. So this is where it comes from, the woman who met herself. I mean, they're completely identical. I mean, think about this moment, they're identical twins. So this is the premise of the story. The author introduces us to both characters, and then this happens. So we know who they both are, that we know a little bit about their background, and then they meet each other. And it kind of taps into what she says about her themes of somebody makes a decision and leads to an event that changes both their lives. Here they are face to face with an identical twin you never knew you had. Now what? And the story unfolds before us. So, Janet and Greg, feel free to add to the synopsis.
Well, one of the quotes I had gotten from the book is Ruth saying she hadn't expected anything to derail her like this so late in her life.
Right. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
That's a big...
And when we think of it, the Oldish experience, Laura Pearson just dives right into that it's not over till it's over. In the past, I think people were taught to think it's over at 65. It's over at retirement. It's over when your kids are grown and leave the house. But here's Ruth's experience of, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. Obviously, it's Debbie's experience too. But as far as Ruth's quote there, whoever thought that something could happen at this point in my life that would be so monumental, so life-changing?
I find a lot of my friends and family who are oldish all have that same thought on a regular basis. It's like, wait, I didn't expect this. Now I have to make an adjustment to this thing that I wasn't expecting. Sometimes it's a small thing, sometimes it's a big thing. Seldom as big as this particular one, where these two women who had, neither one of them knew that they were a twin. They were separated at birth. They grew up not that far from each other, but they had no awareness at all that they were a twin or that their twin was still alive or anything. It's hard to imagine something much more shocking than in your mid-60s. The door is opened and there you are. That's one of the oldish themes, and that's how she handles, and lots of other oldish themes in the book, is here it is. Here's this thing that many of you are feeling. Rather than talk to you about, here's this thing that many of you are feeling, I'm going to open the door and let you look at it.
I know. That's the number one theme that I have written down here is identity and self-discovery. I mean, at the heart of this novel is the question, who am I? Yeah. Both women are in their 60s and unexpectedly meet and discover they're identical twins. It sparks this huge exploration of their identities, both personally and in relation to each other. They've each been shaped by different life paths. It's sort of an interesting study in nature-nurture, too.
When we think about the book and all of the themes it has that relate to being oldish, and this story, as much as it's quite grand and huge and so life-changing, in small ways, I think all of us, as we're aging, find that there are surprises and that we're kind of configuring our identity or experiencing new pieces to our identity that were not there before. So Laura Pearson brought out in a very big way something that each of us experiences as we're aging.
I think that's a healthy part of aging too, that we're still on a road to self-discovery. It's not like we stop growing or we stop changing unless we just like go in the house and shut the door and don't interact with people, which I suppose can happen. But, as long as we're out there in the world, we're going to have this process in our lives of identity and self-discovery. And I think we should. I think it's healthy. But this was a shocking one.
And I'm thinking about the two sisters, how for each of them in that moment when they found themselves and met the woman who met herself, that each of them, like you were saying, Leslie, about where they came from into this moment of the story, with Debbie kind of already being adventurous and on her own and trying new things, and what a shock it was for her and what it meant for her identity. And then Ruth. So it's almost like they represent two stereotypes, because we're probably more both, maybe part of each of those things. But Debbie representing, hey, I'm here, I'm in my life, doesn't matter what age I am, I'm trying new things. But whoa, what does it mean to suddenly have a twin sister? And then Ruth, who's, I've lived my life and I'm married and have kids that are grown and have my house. And then for her, whoa.
I know it was definitely a well experience for most of them, but I think what I liked about the way the author did this is that she stayed within the context of each of their personalities. Like, I think when they met, Debbie, who is going to take whatever life gives her, was like, oh wow, right away she wanted to like figure out, how do we like go about this? How do we get together? Let's take a trip to Amsterdam. She has this kind of ebullient personality, whereas Ruth was like, oh, much more, wasn't sure, wanted to take it slower. I just love the way she did that, because she showed how different their personalities were, even though they were twins. I thought that was pretty brilliant. Yeah.
I just want to say as an aside, but I want to make sure I remember to say this, that when you were talking at the beginning about that Debbie in this new part of her life has decided to work as a door-to-door person with a mental health agency, isn't it interesting that the author picked that for what she was working with or working for? Of all the things that Laura Pearson could have picked, anything, a blood drive, a cancer drive, anything that she picked, that it would be a mental health advocacy group. And I love that she did that.
Well, where's the connection? What's your thought about that?
Well, that's an interesting question. Definitely this book is delving into, in a way, the mental health of each of the characters, their development, their transition into the next phase of their lives, which they each probably imagined was going to be very different. And how what you were just saying a minute ago is, in a way, how they supported each other to navigate this new identity. Debbie helping Ruth kind of, pull her forward with her by traveling to Amsterdam, eating marijuana brownies, etc. And then Ruth was showing Debbie what a life looked like that was more, would it be traditional, more stable? She had a house, a husband, children. So mental health includes all these things, identity and self-growth and becoming and meeting challenges. At the very beginning, it's hard to know how they're each going to react to finding each other, which again goes under all those categories that Ruth could have closed the door and never opened them again to Debbie, and same for Debbie.
Yeah, there's another angle to that, which is that one of the things that is going on in the book is, I think it's a metaphor for the integration of personality in Oldishness, during that period of Oldishness. And so each of these two women, who are in a very real sense the same person, they have identical DNA, and the name of the book is The Woman Who Met Herself. And they're different aspects of the same personality. And one of the things that was a big issue for Debbie growing up was her mother's mental health. And so there would be reasonable for that to be an aspect of her life, that she was seeking out ways to help people who had mental health issues. Debbie, on the other hand, the woman who raised her as her mother,
Ruth, you mean?
Ruth, yes. The woman who raised Ruth was going through a period of deteriorating mental health as she was going through dementia. So, as is often the case in this book, is that there are two sides to this picture that we both get to look at through a clear example of somebody in the book. That was one of her devices, but the mental health wasn't just a random thing for Debbie to have picked. It was something that was vitally important to her in her life, had been the mental health of her mother, and becomes later on something very important to Ruth, partially because of what's happening with her purported mother, and also to discover that her biological mother had mental health issues. So she began to worry about her own mental health and that of her children. So there was a lot of that swirling around and going on at the same time. One other thing I wanted to point out was the difference in occupations. Debbie's perfectly happy walking down the street with young men that she just met who are part of her team in this new job, perfectly happy walking down the street, knocking on the door of a stranger to see what happens. Ruth, on the other hand, has settled into a career of being a baker. She bakes cookies and cakes and things. And the things about being a baker is that you have to be very precise in your measurements. Unlike making a soup where you got a bunch of stuff, you chuck it in the bucket. If you're baking, everything has to be measured, everything has to be the right proportions, everything has to be cooked the exact same amount of time. And so they're very clear in their occupations how different those different aspects of their personality coming out.
Yeah, I think it was great the way she did that too, that each of their occupations really did reflect. Debbie going door to door is much more adventurous, and Ruth, who just had to measure and weigh everything and be exact, that was more like her personality too. You're absolutely right. I hadn't actually thought about it that way, Greg. Yeah, so I think that's really interesting that you brought it up like that. It puts us in identity and self-discovery mode too about these two women. I think that the writing in this was really compelling in that regard because it was so character-driven. She spent a lot of time defining these characters, and she could have made it really overly dramatic, but I think that their personalities and the choices that they've made really guide the narrative in this story. So it makes it easy to connect with both Debbie and Ruth and tell them apart. I mean, we've been getting their names mixed up, but actually their personalities are very different. And when you read the book, you will have no trouble like distinguishing between Debbie and Ruth because she has done a great job of defining them.
One thing that's popping up for me is the theme of community, which we've talked about at various times and know that the research shows that as we age, community is very important for connection, for staying active. And the reason why that just popped into my head is I'm thinking about what would it have been like if they hadn't had each other and the personalities that they brought to their connection to help each of them navigate this really unfamiliar and new terrain. So what we've been saying about Debbie helping Ruth be more or embrace the adventure of this, and Ruth showing Debbie what it's like to have a structured life. Anyway, I'm thinking about for each of us having a community where whoever we are, like the Ruths or the Debbies, that we might not have a twin sister appear at the door to kind of help us navigate some of the new realities of aging, but we can find some of that in community, in connections, in groups, so that there are people to say, hey, come on, let's get out and do this, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, they would both have benefited from more community in that regard, both of the sisters, but they do find a way to discover more about each other after putting some time and effort into knowing each other. They do form a real sisterly connection.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a little more effortful than you might think, or I might have initially thought it would be. And then you see a little resistance from Ruth, of course, the baker, than you do from Debbie. She's the one that's sort of driving the connection. But it does come, and that's an interesting thing to watch in the story, too. It's interesting to watch them actually become sisters.
Yes.
And then there's a third sister. Ruth has a sister. And so they also work a little bit to involve her in the sisterhood. And there was an interesting triangle there between the sisters. For a while, I think Debbie was envious of Ruth's sister and wondered if she could ever have that kind of relationship. And then somehow they all managed to start getting along with each other, which I thought was good. A big deal, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She tackles some really big issues in a way that all comes together because of their personalities, their desire to connect, to figure out what this is about, their openness. It's actually, some of the themes in the book include encouragement and hopefulness. The idea of the weaving together in almost like a tapestry of characters that they're bringing to their relationship.
One of the things that I liked about the book was it seemed like before Janet and I started doing this podcast back 4 years ago when we first were talking about it, we made a couple of lists of oldish topics that we thought we might want to talk about. And when they included empty nesting, dealing with siblings, dealing with relationships changing, dealing with new relationships, dealing with aging parents who may be dealing with dementia, dealing with children who may be struggling with various issues, dealing with just all kinds of things were our list of topics. And I almost had this checklist out when I was reading this book because she hit every single one of them, it seemed to me. Even, should I eat this cookie? was in there. What, should I smoke some weed was in there. It was just almost every single thing that was on our preliminary list of topics to talk about as we talked about oldishness. She checked off almost as though she had done that on purpose. But she did it in a very natural way just by talking about the people. I don't want to forget to say this one. I was very impressed with her ability to write regular people. There are no superheroes in this. There's no mystery. There's no murder plot. There's no villains. There almost wasn't a plot to it. It was just a story about some days in the lives of these two people who met each other. Each one of her characters was just a regular person. There was no chief of detectives, any of that. So every one of her characters was a regular person, and she wrote them perfect. They were recognizable. Sometimes in a book, the main characters are thoroughly fleshed out and the minor characters are not. They're just hinted at, or they play a role rather than be a character. Even the minor characters in this book were thoroughly fleshed out, and they really seemed to be real people. And some of them were just a couple of quick brushstrokes to give you the impression of that person standing over there, but it really made you see that person standing over there. So it was a remarkable bit of writing. The prose style wasn't flowery. Nobody's ever going to claim this as great literature, I don't think. But the storytelling and the character development were just really remarkable.
Yeah, especially around the characters. I agree. Yeah. But the other theme that I wanted to discuss, and I guess it is an oldish theme too, but it's broader in a way, are family secrets, because it kind of starts like they're like secrets like you have a twin sister out there that you never met, and the mother who raised you is not who you thought she was.
Big secrets.
And yeah, big secrets. Yeah. It's not your biological mother. In Ruth's case, she always thought that her mother was her biological mother. Her father was. Oh, and then one of Ruth's sons has been keeping the secret of being gay. And they were just sort of coming out of the woodwork in a way.
Every character had a secret.
Yeah, I mean, Ruth had a secret of not being happy. I think it was a secret of not being happy in her marriage.
And she also helped her son keep the gay secret from her husband. The young man that Debbie kind of adopted, her coworker that she kind of took under her wing, he had a secret from his family about how he was doing at university. There was a secret about one of Ruth's son's wife was pregnant, and they were keeping that secret, and then they kept the miscarriage secret. So there was a lot of secrets. Everybody had a secret. A slightly different secret. So we got a good look at secret keeping.
Yeah, families keep secrets. Sometimes they don't come out. Sometimes they never come out.
Yeah,
You know,
probably a good thing.
it's kind of interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because so it sort of does explore family secrets and past hurts and the things that are left unsaid and how sometimes that can relate to who we become. So it kind of relates to the self-discovery and identity issue as well.
What do you
Um,
think Laura Pearson's stance was on secrets, family secrets? What do you think her message was in this book?
That they exist and that you can, I think if you handle them okay, they can come out in a way that's acceptable, but they also can be very hurtful if you don't reveal them. So I think it was interesting the way she handled it. And I think it was a little bit ambiguous. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm having a hard time, which is why I asked, because I know how I feel about it. I have such strong opinions, and I feel very strongly that secrets are not good. So that came to my mind. I thought, okay, I believe secrets are not helpful in the long run. I wonder, was that a strong message in this book? She definitely brought up a lot or showed how a family can have so many secrets, but did it come out on the side of that wasn't helpful for people, or maybe it's okay?
Yeah, I think she came out on the side of be careful about it, but reveal your secrets. The secrets are not doing anybody any good. The thing that said that to me the most was in her last scene in the book. Ruth's mother, or the woman who raised Ruth, came out of her demented dreamscape for a while, just long enough to reveal the full extent of the secret. And to see that it did good for these women to know what had happened in their childhood. And then her role in the book was over, and so she exited stage left, so to speak. I think it was a pretty clear statement, was reveal your secrets before it's too late.
Okay.
And revealing the secret will give you a moment of clarity before it's too late. So I think that's what she had to say.
Yeah, I agree, because she did have resolution to those secrets, some of them. The girls meeting, obviously, and then becoming sisters again. And there was some resolution to that. And the friend that Debbie worked with, the young man who was really struggling and failing at school. And that was another secret he had, but he didn't know how to handle that with his family, so he didn't tell them. But then they helped him to manage that secret, and it all came out okay in the end. But I think that that's her message, is that you have to trust that it's going to all come out in the end okay.
Yes, because by not having secrets or revealing secrets, you increase the capacity for intimacy, for being connected. So as long as there's a secret between you, whoever those people are, that's blocking that opportunity.
Before we go away, I want to point out something that just popped into my head, which was that one of the themes that I've looked at fairly often in my life is natural family versus chosen family. I grew up in a household, but later on, I found a group of people who were very close friends that I considered to be family. And I think it's interesting that in this book, I don't want to say biological, but the family of origin and the later on chosen family turned out to be the same people. So I think that's pretty good. The characters chose their family of origin to be their family without planning to. Just Debbie knocked on a door. Ruth was making cookies or a cake or something. And they weren't planning to have that happen to them. But the merging of the family of origin and the chosen family was, I guess, part of the theme of integration of personality. That is in the way background of the whole story, is that integration of personality, the integration of the family of origin and the family of choice.
I like that, but I think there's a connection to oldishness there too. Maybe not directly, but I think being able to find family when your families grow up and your kids are on the other side of the world or the other side of the continent or wherever they are, and probably your grandchildren too, you have to figure a way as an oldish person to find family again, and or community or whatever you want to call it, but a unit of people that you're close to. Maybe that's the correlation in some ways with there's your family you're born into, and then there's the family you create, which Debbie was really good at doing because she was more of an outgoing person than Ruth was. Ruth was quieter, more introverted. So you knew that Debbie was going to find family wherever she went, right?
Mhm.
And she did. She actually found her identical twin in the end, but still she had friends, she had her colleagues, she had other people in her life that sort of served as family. And I think that's an important thing to remember as we become older. And there's a lot of research to bear that out, that community and whatever you call family is important to have in your life for your mental health, which is about you in the story, and well-being. So that's my connection to it all.
I completely agree that as an oldish theme, that as we age and we lose family members, either by distance or death, to be able to find family, to choose family. I agree.
And to let them know. One of my themes for the week was the James Taylor song, Smother the People You Love with Love. And so let people know. So let's take that away with you from this edition of the Oldish Book Club, is smother the people you love with love.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for being part of this conversation, for directing it and helping us understand where the author was coming from or who she was, and the summary of the book, and this really rich conversation, as always. Thank you, Leslie and Greg. Before we go, we definitely want to introduce the book for our next book club. Leslie, would you like to share about that?
Well, yes, we're reading The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. It's a really fun read. They just made a movie out of it. I think it's different from the movie. It has more characters. It has more depth. So worth a read, even if you've seen the movie, because I always think it's fun to first read the book and then see the movie. But in this case, I saw the movie first, and now I'm reading the book, and I'm just seeing it a little bit differently. But still a good read and a good story.
Well, I'm going to look forward to that. I'm very excited about reading this book and be able to talk about it together, the three of us.
Well, thank you both once again for a really fabulous conversation in my mind about, well, it was in my mind that it was fabulous, hoping that our listeners agree. I always learn more about what we were just reading and what we've been talking about. So goodbye, Leslie. Goodbye, Janet.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of my community and my family.
Oh, that's nice. Goodbye, Greg, and goodbye, Janet. And thanks for getting me involved in this book club.
Very welcome.
That's it for now. Thanks for listening. We had a great time reading and discussing this fascinating tale about sisters and family, and hope you did too. Our next episode will actually be another edition of the Oldish Book Club. We read the popular mystery The Thursday Murder Club, which has just been turned into a Netflix movie starring Helen Mirren and many other A-listers. It's really fun and quite oldish. Oldish now has a Substack newsletter. Once a week or so, we'll be publishing news of just released and upcoming episodes of Oldish, and sometimes other bits of news about Oldishness. Please subscribe to be notified when there's something oldish new. You can leave comments or requests for topics or guests on this or other episodes at www.oldish.me. There's a link there, too, if you've wondered how you can help support our podcast. If you like what you heard today, please tell a friend and rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to love everybody. Hallelujah.